What a powerful, challenging, fun, heartfelt conversation I had with my friend Garrett Erath. He and I share about our families, marrying our high school sweethearts, having young kids at home, the struggles of business ownership, but really just how we're trying to be good dads and how we're trying to invest in our kids and teach them life skills so that they're not victims, but that they can go out and they can make an impact in this world. So here's my dear friend Garrett. Welcome to the Family Table. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with parents, caregivers, and family experts about the joys and challenges of family life. We'll share the stories, advice, and insights that will help you build a loving and resilient family. Pull up a chair and join us at the Family Table. Welcome, everybody, to the Family Table. I have my friend here, Garrett Erath. Garrett and I know each other through Iron Forums, which is a Christian business owners connection that we have. It's a mastermind for Christian business owners. We're both here in the North Georgia area. And Garrett, I'm so glad you're joining us at the Family Table. Just to kind of get everybody introduced to you, tell us about yourself, your family, and what role you play in your family.
Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate you having me. I'm born and raised Georgia native. My wife, Grace, and I, we met each other in high school, started dating our junior year.
Nice.
Then we got married after our junior year of college. A few years in, we started having kids. So our oldest daughter is Amory. She's 8 years old. And then we actually lost one, 2 years after her.
Okay.
So we didn't get to meet Deacon the way that we wanted to.
Sure.
And then we've got Gentry, who just turned 6, and then Sally, who's 3, and Harvin is like 4 months old now. So 2 boys, 2 girls, and they staggered in gender, and it's a pretty fun thing.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so glad to be connected to you, right? I mean, it's similar stories. Hannah and I were high school sweethearts. Our second son, Noah, passed away in 2020. There's a lot to be said there, and we may get into that later in the conversation, just about navigating life post having a child that you've had that's part of your family that's no longer physically with you. But before we get there, tell us about your family. Is there any kind of tradition? So you still have younger kids, but is there any kind of traditions that you are intentionally trying to establish? Maybe it's a favorite memory of you growing up.
Yeah. Man, traditions are unique for us, and I'll get into this more with our story, but we actually had a long period, a year and a half ago, where our life was a little bit disrupted and displaced for a while. So my wife and I have this longing for tradition and establishing those rhythms, but have yet to be able to fully institute them the way that we want to.
Okay.
And it's especially around Christmas and the holidays. So for us, big things that we love to do together that are, in a sense, tradition is our travel. We love to travel to the national parks together and camp. But growing up, some of the most foundational traditions were time around family with the holidays was always big. And then, mom and dad just incorporated us into everything that they did. They started a couple of side businesses, and anytime they were working on the house, they always had that availability for us to come and learn how to work with tools and what they're doing.
Sure.
And then when we would camp, it was, just visited a couple of national parks and really instilled my love for camping then. So much of what my growing up is what I'm hoping to take and grow exponentially with our kids.
I love that. Hannah and I are actually planning a trip. The boys don't listen to the podcast, so I'm not giving anything away. But we're planning on a larger trip next fall to go out west to some national parks. Any advice for folks that are getting into camping, any kind of parks that you say, hey, this is one we went to and we would definitely go back, kind of more of a bucket list?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody lives a little bit differently. So my advice won't apply perfectly to everybody.
Sure.
We're just kind of like having kids did not prevent us from doing anything. They don't hold us back. It was not, oh no, now we have kids, now we can't travel. No, like we started traveling once we started having more kids. So the looks that we get as we're carrying, the 6 of us off of an airplane, just because we wanted to go watch the eclipse, or we went and spent the weekend out in, Oklahoma and Missouri and Arkansas a couple weeks ago. we just love to do that. But I would say for most people, start something local and small, like go rent an RV on RV Share or Outdoorsy and try it out, or just go tent camping with a $100 Walmart tent.
Yeah.
Go to a local state park and try it out there. And if you like it, go big. One of our favorite national parks of all, I mean, we've been to 6 or 7 or 8 of them together, is Shenandoah Valley, which is like 8 hours from here. It's in Virginia. And you can just scoot up there, and there's no running water at the campsites, no power at the campsites. You just set up camp and go hike.
That. Yeah, I love that. Well, what a fun time to be with family. So we have all boys at home. We didn't get any girls, and that's okay. But for us, man, we absolutely love being outside. Not that your girls don't, but it's really been a fun thing for us to do, and we're really trying to encourage other families to go out and enjoy God's creation, enjoy what He's established. So, talk to us about, as a dad, what's one of the most rewarding aspects that you kind of found thus far in your journey as a dad?
Man, watching the Lord at work.
Okay.
Choosing to trust Him as a family and pray for specific things as a family, and then watch Him fulfill those things, and then be loud about that as a family is really, really cool, because it's not just again, the kids aren't an inconvenience to anything. It is not I'm trying to do my life and they keep interrupting it, and we got to keep schedule. It's more just like, do life as you should on mission as an adult, and bring your kids along with you, and then teach them about what you're doing, help shape them. Even small things like a friend of mine from college, his name is Jesse. He and his wife Mackenzie got married several years ago and moved to Thailand as missionaries. And they were coming for a fundraising tour, and I offered up quickly to host them. So their family came and stayed with us. And it was not like, hey, kids, go outside so we can talk to Jesse and Mackenzie about missions. No, it's like, we're just all hanging out together, having a good time, doing stuff together, and they're interacting there with them.
I love that. And I love this, the natural part of just including them in what you're doing. So talk to me about how you're engaging with them on, you said something about specifically praying for stuff and then celebrating it. What does that look like for your family?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. So one of the biggest things for us is we used to live in Lawrenceville, and life was a little too fast-paced. The city was a little too busy, and our lot didn't give us enough space for the kids to go outside and just be. So we started to intentionally look for property where we could get a few acres and get a little bit away from the city, and be closer to some of our relationships from church. And we included the kids in those prayers. And then we found a piece of land that was undeveloped, and we bought it and sold our house. And we were praying that whole time through with the kids, praying for the finances, praying for the guidance, praying for the direction, praying that the house would be great, praying for what the house is going to be, and praying that the Lord would give us stamina and strong relationships throughout. Sure. So when we bought that land and sold our house, we bought a big camper, like 40 feet long, 2-bedroom camper, just a travel trailer, and we lived in that while we built the house. And man, the house was built on faith. As a business owner, I have always heard a lot of strategic coaching around how to not create too much taxes for yourself.
Okay.
So keeping that income low, and I didn't realize how challenging that would make it to go get a loan to build a house.
Sure.
So we sat on that property for about 1.5 years before any construction started, because we couldn't get any money. So then we just, actively around the dinner table and throughout the day, just started praying every single day that God would provide the finances, the opportunity to go build this house. And now the kids hardly remember living in the camper 1.5 years ago. But sitting around the dinner table, like all of our kids at different times and different nights will want to pray. And it is very often that they incorporate, like, God, thank you for our house and for providing this for us.
I love that.
And I just think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, it's so cool. So talk to me through the stair step of your kids. This was, you're praying about this 4 years ago, was it, to get the house? You've been there about a year and a half.
Yeah.
What is that process like for folks with young kids, and even to now, how you continue to engage with your kids in prayer when you're praying for the house, when you're praying for finances, when you're teaching them those things? What does that look like? Does it look like, hey, son, daughter, come sit with me and listen to me pray? Or are you encouraging them? Are you prompting them to pray about certain things?
That's a great question. Um, First of all, I would say we always, as we're training our children, we always want to call them up. So there's a tendency to put things on too basic of a level and go like, my kid is 8. I better talk to them like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old. Well, man, if you talk to them like a 9 or 10-year-old, then like mentally they'll get there. So that being said, we're exposing a great amount of detail to the kids. It's like, Lord, we need X amount of dollars to build this house.
Sure.
And we're going to explain to the kids before and after that why it takes dollars to build a house and why it takes so many of them. But then in the prayer, it's often just modeling it before them, and not forcing anything upon them to make them pray. But if their heart feels led to pray and they want to take part in just this family thing that we do, we're not even going to tell them what they have to say. It's more just, oh, you want to pray tonight, Sally? Sure, go ahead. And Sally's going to pray about all sorts of things. I love watching our oldest pray because she has a very busy mind.
Okay.
And oftentimes she'll start praying about something, and then it'll turn from that into just telling me and Grace a story. She's praying to the Lord, and then all of a sudden she's like, I got to thank you for that toy. And did you know that my toy, like, goes into this other thing, but just not correcting their prayers unless there's some theological inaccuracy that needs to be fixed, but, not correcting them and not making it overly structured so that they don't see prayer, scripture, the Lord, the church as this severe hierarchy in which if you don't get all the rules right and all the things right, then there's some kind of punishment or backlash for that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that she's Sarah's story with the Lord, and then she starts sharing the story with mom and dad. And there's something about the faith there. The faith is growing there. I remember a mentor of mine was talking about, as I was in probably middle school time frame, saying, hey, we'll pray at night before I go to bed, and I fall asleep when I pray, and I feel bad. And I remember him telling me, like, why? Why do you feel bad? Like you're communing with your father, and you're just falling asleep with him. Like, how's that a bad thing? And so I love that. I love that it's not hey, you've got to pray these 5 things and it has to be in this structure and it has to be exactly how it is, because the relationship's not there. So in line with the mentoring, in line with teaching like that, how are y'all teaching them about responsibility? How are you teaching them about work ethic? What are some ways that you are practically doing that?
Yeah. There's different times and different intensities. So this is not every day we're perfect at all of these things. I never want to put forth this facade that we've got it all right and every day looks the same. It's exactly right. Sometimes, Matthew, it's as simple as like Gentry's being disrespectful this week and won't respect his mom. So he's just going to come to work with me today. I remember one day he had, oh gosh, poor kid. He found a bag of money, and our kids, when they like get coins or whatever, they each have their own little sandwich baggie with their name in it.
Sure.
And he found Sally's bag of money, and it was a bag of money. So he just kept it and poured it in his bag of money. And man, that was not like it was not a light thing. We didn't just say, oh, hey, buddy, you can't do that. No, it's like, hey, you stole from Sally.
Yeah.
If I took his bag of money, he probably put 30 cents in it, probably had a total of $10. I dumped half of it in Sally's bag. And then the rest of the day, I had him out. It was the day that I was building the house. I had him out there with me all day. I made him put a work belt on with tools in it just to get weight there. He didn't need any of those tools, but he had to have the weight there and understand, like, okay, I'm in work mode. And I just made him pull bits and pieces of brick that were left down in the mud around the foundation and go stack them neatly in the yard. I didn't need that. You can bury bits of brick against a foundation. It's perfectly fine, but he needed that discipline of like, let's go out and work hard today. And by incorporating him in the work, it helped to teach him like there are consequences to your actions. And we talked all day about it. And then I took him out for a nice lunch. And by nice, I mean, the greasy burger joint up the corner and bought him lunch. And I actually paid him for his work, but we talked about why he had to do what he had to do. So that's one of the ways, but also like there's chores to do. And they're not paid chores. I don't get paid for making my bed. I don't get paid for a ton of the stuff I do around the house. Neither does my wife and neither do my kids. You're going to take out the garbage. You're going to clean the windows. You're going to wipe the toilets. You're going to pick up your stuff. There's chores that are just part of being in this house.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's chores that do pay. So we've got a flock of 35 or so chickens out back.
Nice.
And my daughter, our oldest daughter, she's in charge of the chickens. She's got to maintain the food supply, maintain the water. She's got to put fresh shavings in the nesting boxes. She's got to collect the eggs. She's got to sweep the shed. Like there's all this stuff that she's got to do. And then I pay her $5 a week for helping with that. So those are some of the ways that we've started to really hammer into them over the last couple of years that have really produced well. And then something brand new that we're doing right now is the oldest two, we're starting a vending business together.
Nice. So okay. Tell me more.
It irks me that every time they get $1, they just gotta go spend it like right away. It is burning a hole in their pocket. Every time we go to the store, like Home Depot, they sell these suckers for $1. It's just a sucker.
Yeah.
And it's $1 for the sucker. And I hate watching my kids pull out $1 bill to buy one sucker. So I don't know how it came up, but at one point I said, hey, what if we like bought our own bubble gum machine and people paid us for our bubble gum? Because they were, I know what it was. They were trying to save up money to buy bubble gum out of a bubble gum machine. And I'm like, kids, the gross profit on, and I'm like, okay, they don't understand gross profit. You're wasting your money. Let's go make money on other kids instead. So we sat down on the back deck one night last week. I kept it to about 30, 45 minutes. We wrote a business plan, named the company, stated our goals, said what we were going to do with the money, decided an ownership split, and figured out if we were going to do, if they were going to use debt financing or partnership. So the three of us are now partners in this vending machine business. They both put up $40 capital each. I put up the other $124, and we bought a nice high quality vending machine that sells bubble gum and bought the first box of bubble gum. So this week we're working on getting that placed in a store so that they can learn entrepreneurship and all the hard work that goes into a business plan. And then soon they're going to understand what it feels like to take what feels like profits and then go spend money out of it.
Yeah.
And then once the business is doing well, I'm going to teach them all about the IRS.
I love that. We had something somewhat similar with Walker. He was wanting to buy some new toy, and we just said, buddy, we don't have the money for it. We don't have that budgeted. You don't have the money for it. And he said, well, how can I make money? And I said, well, there's a lot of ways to make money. What's something you enjoy doing? And he and Hannah just a couple of weeks before had made cookies. And he said, I enjoy getting to make cookies with Mom. I said, well, there's a business plan right there. We can do that. So let's talk about that. And so, we kind of walked through, hey, let's get some materials. Let's hire your mom. Let's start this. And let's have an opportunity for you to do sell some lemonade and some cookies in the neighborhood. And he did, and it was great. And he made enough money, and our neighbors and the community was very generous, and it was all the things, right? But it was a fun opportunity as a dad to show him practically some responsibility, some independence, but to say like, hey, if you want to do something that's not just a handout, you can go do something. If you're wanting something, go do something. Go be active, be proactive in this instead of just expecting mom and dad to do that. And I love what you said about the chores, right? We have the same thing with our boys. Around here, we say our family, we help each other. That is a core value in our family. We help one another. And so when I ask you for help, I need your help. I'm not saying will you if you feel like it. No, I need your help in this. Please help me. And it's the same way when you come to me and say, hey, Dado, can you please help me? Sure. I'll be happy to, as best I can to my abilities at this time. So I love that y'all are modeling that. Let's get back to you shared earlier, and I don't want to belabor this point, but you all lost, you said
Deacon.
Yeah. Talk to us about that experience. When was that? Give us a little bit more of Deacon's story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I will give you some of it. I have yet to ever be able to like tell much detail without weeping.
Sure.
So like I'll share some details, but it is still very raw, even though it was 7 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, we were so excited. He was a faithful answer to prayers. Like our daughter came easy. We didn't have to work hard for that first pregnancy, but we did have to work hard and pray hard for the second one. And yeah, we were pumped about him. He was, I think, 13 weeks along. And we went on a family beach vacation. And man, my wife was concerned. She said she was cramping and she felt off and it was weird. So we took her to the hospital in the middle of the night. And they treated it pretty dismissively, as I was. And we went home and they said, yeah, everything's fine. And then turns out everything wasn't fine. So yeah, unfortunately she gave birth to him way too early, right there in the condo bathroom while the rest of us were out on the beach, just giving her some space because she didn't feel well. So that was a really, really hard time. Our daughter was, maybe 2 at the time. She was very young. So that was the whole family. And that was like, those events surrounding that are the things that I cannot describe in depth right now.
Yeah, sure.
But after that is like my life story. It was, and that I'll talk to anybody all day about because for so long, part of it is the American context. Part of it, there's so much that goes into it. But in general, so many people, we live with a mindset of how do I avoid hardship? How do I avoid pain?
Yeah.
That's why we scroll on social media. That's why when we get home from work, we just want to be left alone. That's why we don't go out and get in community. It's why we don't share the gospel. It's why we would rather yell at our kids and spank them rather than sit and talk with them for a long time about what they did wrong and then spank them. There's so much that we do that's all around the avoidance of pain. And we tend to think of things as good things and bad things. And after that, like, oh man, my mindset totally shifted on all that stuff. And I realized that blessing is not, I've got stuff or it's easy or I don't have as many concerns. Blessing is understanding and knowing that the God of the universe sent his son to be crucified on my behalf so that instead of my sin being punished on the cross, it was punished in his body that I might be set free. And no matter what challenges and hardships and opposition I face in this life and how awful things get, as our pastor says all the time, that's the closest to hell I'll ever get. Yeah. So as we go through the hardships and the difficulties of losing a child or losing a job or not having a home, well, that's tough, but look around and ask, okay, Lord, what are you trying to teach me here? There were a couple of songs that really, really stuck with us during that season. And one of them was a Shane and Shane song. It's a hymn, Though You Slay Me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's overlaid with John Piper's preaching.
Yep.
And he talks about how everything is meaningful. There is nothing meaningless in this life. All your suffering, all your pain, all your hardships, it's totally meaningful, and God wants to use it for good and for glory. So take those opportunities to grow in them rather than say, woe is me, this opposition is so hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
man.
that's
I
the,
appreciate you sharing that.
yeah,
The Though He Slay Me song, that still, I wouldn't say monthly. I mean, I listen to that song a lot. So we found out about Noah's diagnosis. Noah had trisomy 13, and so we were actually able to carry him to term, but he passed in 2020, a few days before the pandemic hit. It was just a crazy circumstances. I mean, it's probably a longer story than what we can share in this moment. You and I can
yeah,
definitely talk about that more, and I know I'm going to continue to share more about it on the podcast as we go through the journey. But with his life and now living post him no longer being with us, that song has been one that I've played and just wept
yeah,
and called out to God.
yeah,
And I read through, David's life in the Psalms, and I see that I personally, I find such comfort in reading through the Psalms because you see the highs and the lows of life. And I see the consistency of God in the midst of all of it,
yeah,
that He's the
yep,
same today as He was yesterday, as He will be tomorrow. And so it it doesn't mean that He's far from me if I'm in a high or low.
yep.
It just means I'm going through life. And so I appreciate y'all sharing about that. It's nothing prepares you for it.
No,
And
no,
it's, we have found in our life, it has given me such a greater understanding of other people's stories, and a greater empathy for other people's stories. Right? Sympathy is just, hey, I'm sorry you're going through that, and empathy is more, hey, I have an experience similar to that, and I know somewhat of the pain that your family's gone through, and so that is a very powerful thing. If we allow the Lord to redeem that part of our story, right, then we're able to engage with people in that level and
yeah,
in that conversation, instead of just saying, hey, I'm so sorry you went through that.
yeah,
That you're able to engage with somebody in the darkest part of their soul and say,
yeah.
hey, there is light here, and I know in this moment it doesn't feel like it, and it's okay to hurt, and it's okay to be confused, it's okay to be sad, but know that there is light, and there is light here because we do have a Savior.
And like you said, that nothing can prepare you for it, and there's a lot of overlap and similarities between our stories, though they're not the same. And so much of what we're talking about is not just the loss of a child, but business hardship and relational challenges, and
Yep.
again, issues with your home or something. There's so many things that A, nothing can prepare you for it, but B, like, man, what a grace of God that these things are because of what he can do in them.
Yeah.
And if you were to go back and ever ask, if the Lord ever consulted me, what a stupid thought, but if the Lord ever consulted me, I would say, no, thank you. I would rather not have that. No, thank you, Lord. I don't want that trial. Yet being on this side of it, I would I don't even know how to word this, Matthew, but like, I'm grateful that God never consulted me in it,
Yeah.
because all the things that he taught me, all the growth that he produced in me, all of our children, my wife, all of our surrounding friends and family, our church, the way that we minister to people, like, the gospel has exponentially grown in my life and in the lives of those around me because of the hardship and the awful uh, turmoil and pain that we went through. Again, it's not just about losing a child, it's any number of things.
Sure.
It's a grace from the Lord that he doesn't ask us if he can do that or not, and he just does these things and takes these things and shapes them the way that he wishes, and it always works out for his glory and our good, so
Yep.
long as we yield
Amen.
to his spirit.
Amen. And it allows for us to say, hey, am I going to be a victim? We said this earlier with the kids, right?
Yeah,
Are we going to be a victim in this moment? Or are we going to take it from that perspective of, God, what are you teaching me in this moment? Um, in the core center of the storm, it's hard to have that perspective, right? And our frustration, our uh, anger, our confusion doesn't scare God. That doesn't make him less in love with us, doesn't make him less God himself. It's just a way that we are able to communicate the way we're feeling in that moment. but always kind of pointing back to God. I don't know who you are. The Hebrews verse for me that really kind of rocked my heart is He's the same today as He was yesterday, as He will be tomorrow. And I had to speak that truth over myself almost every day, and just saying, I don't know what I'm going through. This does not make sense. No one in my life that I knew of had gone through anything like this. And so we were the first one of our friends and our friend group that had been through in a situation like this. And I just said, I don't know. I don't know what to do. But there is a part of me coming to the end of myself that I can look back now over the last 4 and really almost 5 years since we found out. The amount of growth that's happened in me is exponential compared to before then. That, I think it's A.W. Tozer said that God can't use a man greatly until He breaks him deeply. And so, that was me. That was my life. That was me coming to the end of myself saying, you are God and I am not, and I do not understand everything, but I'm going to trust you because you're the same today as you were yesterday, will be tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't find those moments in a life of safety.
Yeah.
And I think that's why many people will put off marriage till it's much later, till their career's established and there's tens of thousands in the bank. That's why they'll put off kids till later, is because what happens if they're born and we can't afford it right and we're not totally prepared, and people are afraid to leave their job and go get a better job because the fear of what if. And man, like the vulnerability before the Lord and just trusting Him to take things and follow Him closely, that's where that growth happens.
I love that. So talk to us from a parenting perspective. I appreciate you sharing about Deacon. I will look forward to meeting him one day, as I know you will, Noah. Talk to us about your kids here. How are you teaching them that independence? How are you being intentional to say, hey, we're not going to live just in safety. We're gonna kind of press the what's right for your age, press into some of that unknown, press into some of that challenge. How are y'all doing that?
Yeah, there's a lot of minor ways. I can't think of tons of like huge pillar things that I can say right now, but like some of the basics is my kids know that it is not an allowable phrase in our house to say I can't.
I love that.
Man, like when they say I can't do whatever, it's, hey buddy, you don't say I can't. So what do you need to say? Okay, I need help with whatever. So when our kids face an obstacle, I want them to understand the answer is never, I can't overcome this obstacle. It's what are the creative ways that I have to get around this obstacle?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much like that. Like even the small things of taking care of the chickens. Like, hey, why are we doing this? What are we doing? When we started this vending business, hey guys, there's going to be money to be made. What are we going to do with that money? And why are we doing this? Why are we starting a business? And I love that my daughter pointed out to have fun. It's like, praise the Lord. Yes.
Yeah.
It is like the things that we do, man, there's value in the fun. There's valuable lessons to be learned there. And then even again, like just the stuff that we're doing with going outdoors and camping, like it has a purpose to it because we want the kids to interact with the Lord in nature, interact with different communities of people, have a diverse life experience so that they're exposed to more. The more that our kids can get exposed to in terms of life experiences, the more the Lord can easily guide and direct their passions and pursuits. So they're not going to just finish high school and know exactly what they're going to do if they've always lived in a really tight box.
Sure.
So those are a few thoughts, and I hope are answering that question appropriately.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's I think all very, very good points. And I've got a dear friend of mine who says that his goal as a dad is to have his kids fail at home when it's safe for them to fail. Not that he wants them to be safe per se of never having failure, but he wants them to have that moment of overcoming obstacles, of not coming up short at times, and allowing them to learn in the safety of his home, in the safety of his protection, rather than I'm going to pave the way and make it really clear and easy for you until you get out into the real world and you realize it's not clear and it's not safe. It's not easy. And so I'm going to allow you
conflicting voices out there too.
Yeah.
That's, man, a big thing in our household is like letting the kids fail.
I love that.
which is such a hard thing as a parent. Like,
Yeah.
I remember the first time my son made a bike jump, and I jumped it first. And I stood back with my wife, who happened to be outside at the same time. And I said, he's about to eat it. He's going to hit his face, and it's going to be so bad, but he needs to do this. He went on that bike jump, didn't pull up when I told him
Yeah.
to, kept his butt on the seat, and just like dove face forward and ate dirt. And then I praised him for it. I was like, dude, way to go. You tried hard. You did the hard thing.
Yeah.
You're going to get back up and you're going to get back on your bike again. This is awesome, man. Way to go. So for the kids to understand that making mistakes and having what we view as failures, to see those through a different lens of these are learning things, these are good. And for me to teach my daughter, my oldest, who's a typical firstborn perfectionist, for me to teach her that mistakes are a good thing is just like, it's taking so much work and it's so backwards to her.
Sure.
But what I've instilled in her is like you're saying, hey, I want you to make mistakes as a 6-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as an 8-year-old at home on minor things, because you got to learn that when you make mistakes on small things, that you can overcome them. And then when you make mistakes on medium things, you're going to learn that you can overcome them. And then when you make mistakes on big things, you're going to learn that you can overcome them. But there's certain things that you don't want to make mistakes on. So you need to learn the consequences of mistakes now, while you're in a very protected bubble, while you don't have to worry about all the fears and concerns that come with mistakes as you get older.
Sure.
So let's fail now. Let's fail early, and let's fail hard and see how it goes and learn from it. And then as you get older and bigger, you'll be totally fine with trying new things, because fear of failure is not the primary obstacle anymore.
I love that. Yeah, and it just allows them to experience grace. It's what an incredible way for our kids to experience grace in our homes of messing up, knowing that they're not defined by their mistakes. So let's take a little bit of a pivot here. As a business owner, you've got multiple ventures. I know several of them just from our friendship, but I don't want to get into all the things that you got your hands in, but I do want to ask you, how are y'all navigating the pull between work life, the demands there, especially as a small business owner, and home life? So you've got several young kids. They're all needing you and your wife. They're needing you all day long. How have you found, balance is a myth, right? There's nothing that's perfectly balanced, but how have you found navigating the pull between those two? What kind of advice would you give to us?
Yeah, balance is that's unique, but boundaries are very real.
Love that.
And boundaries are the thing that we kind of live and die by. I'll tell you a story from early on. So I started my business. We're a design build firm now, but early on I was a handyman, and I was just trying to make my way through. And I knew I had to bring home an average of $200 a day to get through life and for things to be okay. And man, I took a lot of glory and pride in working long days and many days. This was before we instituted Sabbath well in our household. Okay. So I worked usually 6.5 days a week or 6 days a week. And the longer the day, the better I felt. You know, if it was a 14, 15-hour day and I left the house when it was dark and got home when it was dark and just plowed my head into my pillow, man, I felt good about myself.
Sure.
And there was one Saturday where I hadn't finished stuff on the Friday before or the day before. So I went back to the job site on Friday. My wife told me, hey, meet us at the park. Her and Amory, we're going to go there. And we were just going to have like a couple hours as a family to play and then have dinner at the park. And I was supposed to be there at 2:00. And man, I finished up my job an hour away at like 2:30 or 3 or something, like way beyond what I was supposed to have done. And me, it's just like, okay, yeah, it is what it is. Business comes first. We're building something here. And I show up at the park and my wife is putting our daughter in the car when I pull up. And to me, again, no big deal. Daddy's got to work, got to bring home the bacon. And man, I have a very gracious wife who is very direct. And that was the day that I quit working Saturdays.
I love that.
I won't recall the whole conversation before you, but the idea is we started to realize that there's business things that have to get done and there's personal things that have to get done. And a mentor of mine says, that tasks take as long as you have. If you've got 4 hours to get something done, it's going to take you 4 hours to get done. So man, for us to just say, okay, I'm not working endless hours anymore at night.
Sure.
I have the permission to leave as early as I need to in the morning, but I've got to be home by 6. And if I can't be home by 6, I need to have said it on Sunday afternoon when we were planning out a week so that everybody understood that I wouldn't be home by 6. But man, I do think that people will demonize and vilify profits and demonize and vilify capitalism. And through that mindset comes the idea that like work is getting in the way of family. And the toxic other side of that is that family's getting in the way of work. Man, I just see them as both not necessary evils. They're both necessary goods. They're both what we're called to. They're both right. Sure. I'm supposed to run a family. I'm supposed to provide for them financially. I'm supposed to go out and work hard and do my best as unto the Lord. So my family understands that when I'm at work, I need to be at work, and they should not stop me from that. And my work understands that when I'm with the family, I'm supposed to be with the family, and work can't get in the way of that. So both are necessary, both are essential, both are good, both are called by the Lord. So it's not always Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But as long as our family understands what we're trying to do, we are working towards both of those goals cohesively, and they are not at odds with each other. They work complementary with each other.
I love that. I love that distinction. So you and I have talked about John Mark Comer, Ruthless Elimination Hurry. What a great book. Hannah and I have wrestled through that book over the last several years. Talk to us about Sabbath. So somebody hears that term, they have no clue what that means. What is that for your family specifically? You don't talk about the church as a whole or what, but what does Sabbath mean to your family, and what are some things that y'all have instituted to apply that?
Yeah. First off, I want to clarify, I don't give a full unqualified endorsement of John Mark Comer. He does say in his book that he's a democratic socialist.
Yeah.
So lots of things there, but man, the Sabbath was the biggest takeaway for us. And I realized Jesus is our Sabbath. Jesus is where we find our rest. That's absolutely true. And Jesus died as the fulfillment of not only the prophecies, but all the commands of the Lord, and stands in our place. And all that stuff is totally right and true. And that does not mean that all the Old Testament goes away. Sure. And it doesn't mean that God's laws and rules are obsolete. In fact, Jesus expressly states that that's not the case at all. He died to fulfill, or he came to fulfill them, but none of that will perish and go away. So Sabbath is totally designed by God. And man, when you rest in what God's rules are, you find that like theologically they're good and they align with all of the Bible. And when you live them out practically, they just do something for you. God's commands are not just good for God, they're good for God and his people. So for us, we chose Sunday as our Sabbath because Saturdays tend to be busy. When you got 4 kids, there's a lot of birthday parties. There's a lot of people who need help. There's hunting. There's all these things. Sure. Saturdays often get interrupted, but our family knows our cadence on Sundays. So for us in our household, we wake up at the same time. We listen to the same album. In the morning when we're making breakfast, and when we're driving to church, we go to church, the same service every single week. And then we come home and we have lunch, and then we have nap, and then we have the rest of the day just to hang out as the family. Love that. And it keeps us from having to think about when we get an invitation for something else or an interruption for something else. We don't have to process, oh, should we do that today or not? Should we go to Costco today or not? No, it's just not what we do. Yeah. So that has provided a ton of freedom for us. It's provided a ton of predictability. And what predictability produces in children is stability and safety, and gives them something to hold on to. And now you've got some sort of a rock or a hold that you can go back to, an anchor point where Sunday is Sabbath. It's the family day. This is what we're going to do. And the kids know they've got like free reign of dad in the afternoon. Yeah. So when there's something that they want to do, they don't always just run upstairs to my office and say, yeah, can we go fly my drone? But like Friday, the kids will say, what day is tomorrow? And I'll say Saturday. And Gentry will be like, yeah, on Sunday, can we fly my drone together on Sabbath? Yeah, dude, absolutely we can. And if we
Love
can
it.
do that before that, that too. But Sunday, you can bank on that time with me for sure.
I love that. And it's just, again, I love the predictability creates stability that it gives your children the assurance of time. And that's really where our kids are, we're learning as a culture, I would say, that it's, show me, it used to be show me your wallet or show you what you worship or show you what you love. Now it's show me your calendar, show me your time, and I'll show you what you love. And so for our kids, being able to schedule specific time that we have with them is so crucial. And I love that y'all are doing that. So we're coming towards the end of our time. Garrett, I appreciate all the wisdom that you've been sharing. We've got two final questions that I'd love to ask. Number one, what is a book that has deeply informed you as either a dad or as a husband, and what's something you learned from it?
Oh gosh. That's tough, man. Yeah, there have been a lot of great books that I've read, but like the I don't want to get too redundant, but the topic that we just rolled off of
Sure.
is one of the biggest changes that has come about in our family. So that John Mark Comer book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, read that probably 2 years ago, and it has stuck and resonated. And it has really just instituted the value of rest, the value of family time. It has just been, a really, really good thing. So that might be cheating and just
No,
stealing
that's great.
the
No,
last question.
that's
Um,
fantastic. No,
yeah,
I highly recommend that. I'm glad that your family is seeing the fruit from it, right? Because a lot of people will read a book. The reason I try to ask what is something you learn from it is a lot of people read a book, they get a good idea, they do nothing with it. So then they
yeah,
don't get any fruit from it. And so I love that your family has been cultivating that habit of time together, of spending time in rest, knowing that the Lord is ultimately in control and that you can trust Him. And now you're seeing some of that fruit now. You've been doing this for a couple of years now. So I love that. So, last
yeah,
question. What's a piece of advice that you would give to yourself if you could go back outside of what you've already shared 10 years ago?
yeah.
What's a piece of advice you would give?
Yeah, man, I'll lump a couple things together here. One, I would tell myself to like recklessly pursue the Lord and what He has for me. I spent too much time growing up thinking that the will of God was this magical hidden thing that I had to somehow get to and go on this long journey to find. And then once I found it, it would be a scroll that I would open and just live it out.
Sure.
And it's so much different than that. Like God's will for your life is really just love Him and obey His commands and love people, and just pursue your passions. And as long as your passions align with who the Lord is, and are not sinful. This is Christian hedonism from John Piper. It lived out. Like that's what God wants for His people. So yeah, I lived in a lot of fear of the unknowns and worry about the risks that I was going to take. And man, the biggest risks that I've taken in my life are the ones that have paid off the biggest and the most and shaped who I am today. Had I taken more risks, I wonder what that would have produced in me.
Sure.
And the second thing that's complementary with that is, man, learn how to love and value people.
Okay.
Uh, my natural tendency is to view people as an obstacle to overcome.
Okay.
It is just too easy for me to see people as a tool to use or in my way, or how do I get you to do what I want you to do so that I can be served better. And God has done a ton with me in the last several years on that, to where I'm nowhere near who I used to be. But had I known that at 23, that like, dude, don't, people are not in your way.
Yeah.
People are something to glorify God with, and they're I'm the tool to benefit them, not the other way around.
I love that. What a great way to end, man. Garrett, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the example that you and your family are setting, the way you're running your businesses, but the way that you're serving in your home. And I appreciate you pulling up a chair to the family table today and sharing about your story. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon. Thank you for pulling up a chair at the family table. We hope today's conversation has strengthened the bonds that hold us together. Don't forget to follow the show to keep these heartwarming stories coming your way. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share it with friends and family. And if there's someone whose family story you think would be a perfect fit for the show, drop their name in the comments. We would love to hear from you and bring more families to the table. Until next time, cherish those moments with your loved ones.